It was a calm morning in the Mediterranean, the kind sailors prayed for after long weeks at sea. The surface of the water shimmered like polished glass, and a soft breeze carried the smell of salt and diesel from the nearby port. A massive container ship, the Aurora Star, drifted gently at anchor, its chain creaking rhythmically with the waves. Standing on the bridge, Chief Engineer Malik watched the endless blue and thought of a question that had followed him since his very first day aboard a ship. What exactly does the anchor do? He'd heard people say 1,000 times, "Drop the anchor to stop the ship," but something about that had never felt quite right. He knew enough physics to understand that a steel ship weighing tens of thousands of tons could never be stopped by a few thousand kilograms of metal resting on the seafloor. Yet that was exactly what most people believed. It wasn't until Malik's second year at sea that he saw the truth for himself. The Aurora Star had been making its way through the Bay of Biscay, one of the most unpredictable waters in Europe. Waves as tall as buildings had been hammering the hull, and the storm radar was a blur of red and orange. Captain Hernandez, a man of few words but infinite patience, had ordered them to take shelter in a nearby cove until the storm passed. "Prepare the port anchor," he had said calmly, his voice steady despite the chaos outside. Malik had watched from the deck as the anchor was lowered, massive, rust-colored, and menacingly heavy. The sound of the chain scraping through the hawse pipe was deafening. The crew released several hundred meters of chain until the captain gave the signal to stop. The storm battered them all night, but the ship never drifted far. When dawn came, the sea had calmed, and Malik noticed something remarkable. The anchor wasn't buried deep into the sand. It had merely gripped the seabed in a strange way, its chain stretching far out, lying almost flat against the ocean floor. Later that morning, as he inspected the chain locker, Malik asked the captain, "Sir, why didn't the anchor sink deep and hold the ship still? Shouldn't it stop the ship completely?" Captain Hernandez smiled. "An anchor doesn't stop a ship, Malik, it resists movement." "That's not the same thing." Those words would stay with him for years. He later learned that the secret of an anchor wasn't about brute force. It was about geometry, friction, and the clever use of tension. When you drop an anchor, it doesn't go straight down to pin the ship in place. Instead, sailors let out several times the depth of the water and chain, sometimes 5, 7, even 10 times as much. That chain doesn't just hang. It sprawls out across the seabed, heavy and sinuous, pressing down into the sand. The real magic happens when the wind or current tries to move the ship. The chain tightens, pulling the anchor horizontally rather than vertically. This motion causes the anchor's flukes, those curved metal arms, to dig deeper into the seafloor, creating a massive resistance force. The ship doesn't stop because it's pinned. It stays roughly in place because the anchor resists being dragged. It was a subtle but profound difference. Years later, Malik would use that knowledge during one of the most dangerous moments of his career. The Aurora Star had been upgraded into a fuel carrier by then, moving between Dubai and Singapore. During one journey through the Indian Ocean, the ship's main engine failed. The wind was fierce, and without propulsion, the massive vessel began to drift toward a rocky shoreline. Panic rippled through the crew. "Drop the anchor," someone shouted. But Malik knew the depth, nearly 70 meters, was too great for a normal hold. A single anchor wouldn't stop a fully loaded tanker. He rushed to the bridge and convinced the captain to use both anchors, letting out the full length of their chains, forming a wide V across the seabed. For hours, the ship drifted, the chains groaning under the strain, but the motion slowed. The anchors didn't stop the vessel outright. They tamed its movement, turning violent drift into a slow, controlled sway. When the repair team finally restarted the engines, the Aurora Star was still intact, and the rocks lay a safe kilometer away. That day, Malik understood the real power of an anchor. It didn't fight the sea head-on. It worked with it, distributing force, absorbing shocks, and holding its ground through balance rather than brute strength. He became obsessed with the science behind it. The more he studied, the more elegant it seemed. The earliest anchors weren't metal at all. Ancient sailors used stones, baskets filled with sand, or even wooden logs tied together with rope. These primitive designs didn't stop ships. They created drag, slowing their drift just enough to keep them stable in shallow waters. The concept of the modern anchor evolved slowly. as humans learned that the shape mattered far more than weight. By the time the 19th century rolled around, engineers had discovered that curved claw-like shapes worked best. When pulled horizontally, they dug into the seafloor like a hand grabbing sand. The more the ship pulled, the deeper the anchor set. Even today, with all our advanced technology, that principle hasn't changed. Whether it's a small sailboat in a quiet harbor or a 1,000-foot container ship in open sea, the anchor's job is not to stop. It's to hold tension in perfect equilibrium with the ocean's forces. Malik once explained it to a group of young cadets who visited his ship for training. He picked up a small model anchor from his desk and said, "Imagine you're trying to stop a kite in the wind. If you tie it to a thin string and pull hard, it might snap. But if you give it some slack, let the wind lift it and the string bow, it becomes stable. The anchor works the same way. It's not about defeating the wind or current. It's about creating balance." The cadets nodded, though a few looked puzzled. He smiled and continued, "The ship is never truly still. It always moves a little, shifting, swaying. The anchor allows that. If you tried to make it completely rigid, something would break. The chain, the anchor, or the seabed itself. The ocean doesn't tolerate stubbornness." That lesson would come back to him one fateful night near the coast of Sri Lanka. The Aurora Star had anchored in a deep water bay, waiting for clearance to refuel. Around midnight, a violent undercurrent began to sweep through the harbor. The navigation alarm started beeping. Satellite readings showed that the ship was drifting backward slowly but steadily. Malik raced to the deck. The crew thought the anchor had failed, but as they checked the chain tension and sonar readings, he realized what was happening. The chain had stretched to its full length, straightening under immense pressure. Instead of resetting, the anchor was being pulled at an upward angle, loosening its grip. "Let out more chain," Malik yelled. The deckhands obeyed, feeding another 100 meters of steel links into the water. The tension dropped, the angle flattened, and the ship stopped drifting. The anchor had reburied itself, saving the vessel once again. When the storm passed, Malik stood on deck watching the sunrise over calm waters. The anchor chain glistened with salt crystals and seagulls circled lazily above. It struck him then how misunderstood this humble device was. To most people, it was just a chunk of metal meant to keep ships from moving. But to him, it was a masterpiece of design, one that embodied patience, balance, and respect for the natural world. He thought of the countless anchors scattered across the ocean floor, each one quietly doing its job, unseen, uncelebrated. They didn't fight the sea, they understood it. Years later, when Malik retired, he would often tell young sailors, "The anchor's strength isn't in how deep it goes, it's in how well it listens to the ocean." He once gave a lecture at a maritime academy, and at the end, a student raised her hand and asked, "Sir, if the anchor doesn't stop the ship, then what really keeps it safe?" Malik smiled. Awareness, seamanship, and a respect for forces greater than yourself. He paused for a moment before adding, "You see, the sea doesn't care about your anchors or engines. It only rewards balance. That's what the anchor teaches us, how to stay grounded without being rigid." The room was silent for a while. The cadets weren't just thinking about ships anymore. Today, when we see an anchor tattoo or a symbol on a sailor's arm, we think of stability, safety, something that holds firm. But if you look closely, that meaning runs much deeper. The anchor doesn't stop chaos, it makes peace with it. So the next time you imagine a ship lowering its anchor into the sea, don't think of it as dropping a weight to stop movement. Picture instead a delicate dance between steel and sand, between gravity and motion, a balance that allows the ship to rest, even in an ever-shifting world. That's the real secret of the anchor. It's not there to stop the ship. It's there to remind us that sometimes strength comes not from resistance but from harmony. And as Malik once told his crew, looking out at the horizon, anchors don't work the way you think. They work the way the ocean allows them to.